Well, I'm Wes Plagman, and we're here in Kansas City, Missouri. And we're going to talk a little bit about when I started out with the company to start with. I was going to college in Minnesota, and I got back to Iowa after I'd gotten married and got a phone call from Dick Morrissey to interview for a job with International at Watertown, South Dakota. So back in June 12th of 1947 is when I started with International at the Watertown district in the office, and first I moved over to the stock department after a couple months, and then lo and behold in 1949 the Watertown, one of the first district offices, closed. So then instead of getting transferred to St. Paul, which they wanted me to, Phil Hansen's talked me into going to the Watertown store, and I started there as service station clerk and got up to store accountant and then a salesman. And those were some good years there, and that's where my family was. All the kids were born there. I had 4 boys born in Watertown. And then back in '61 I got transferred to Aberdeen, South Dakota as branch manager. And then from there I got down to Sioux Falls as branch manager later on. But going back to some of the things that happened earlier, when the war ended and we started with International, Farmall tractors were waiting list. I think if I remember right, there was 50 or 60 farmers on the list for Farmall M tractors. And then when you looked at the lot for trucks, it kind of reminded you of what Henry Ford used to say: you could have any color truck, a car you wanted, as long as it was black. Well, you could have any color International K-line, KB line trucks as long as it was green. Every one of them, from the panels all the way up to the KB10s, are all green. So those were days of the KB8s and stuff and 450 engines, and we had a lot of good luck with those trucks, and a lot of people bought them. And, kind of interesting when you think back, most all those trucks in those days, when we sold them in South Dakota, you put sanders on the back of the tractors through the snow and the stuff.
Huh.
And
you mean sanders? They would put sand out?
Yeah, there's sanders on the back of them, and they drop sand down in front of the wheels so they get
like
traction.
Like a train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that worked out fine, and then we come out with the L line and then the R line, and that 450 engine was a very good engine. In fact, when I was at Aberdeen, they had a co-op up there, and we tried to get him to come in for preventive maintenance. He says, "No, I want us to just see how far this thing will run." And I don't know what happened after I left there, but he had over 400,000 miles on it, and he hadn't touched it yet when I left. So I mean, that it speaks well for that engine.
I'd say.
And then when I was at Aberdeen, we had Hyman Transportation. Gene Pikowski bought a lot of his trucks from the Aberdeen branch, and then he finally moved to Minneapolis. And then we got to Sioux Falls, and we had All-American Freight Line. And that was the 2 biggest freight lines that I was involved in. And then later on, we went out as key market manager, and then back to the districts, and I got transferred to Denver, Colorado. I was working for Mr. Walker at the Kansas City region. And we're talking about, you said something about dealers, what impressed you. I was very fortunate when I was out there. Pharisees Truck and Equipment Company became the truck dealer of the year when I was there. So I thought that was a pretty good deal for Pharisees. And then about halfway through that, got transferred from the Kansas City region to the Dallas region. I was down there for a couple of years, still living in Denver and traveling. And then back in 1982, a bunch of us got transferred into Kansas City to Dealer Central. And we spent our time there, and 1986 is when we retired. And I think, if I remember right, there were 26 of us that retired at that time. And going back, at one time, all 4 of my boys was working for International Harvester at the same time I was. That was kind of division.
Why don't you mention their names?
Well, Kirk was in Chicago, Bruce was in Chicago, Mark was working at the Omaha branch, and John was in Sioux Falls. He was the Sioux Falls branch for a while, and he started out as a collector when he started the company. So the only one left with International now is John. He's at Omaha with his dealerships.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Kind of like what John was talking about here. It's kind of a sad deal with some of the problems we've had with our truck engines. The DT466 was such a powerful engine, and you could get 200,000-300,000 miles on it, and it was just, nobody could touch it. And I don't know if we get troubles with it, we don't even make it anymore, and that's a sad deal. And then we've had a lot of problems with the max force, like John said, and we're still suffering from that. I don't know how long and it's going to take to get out from under it. The new LT is a nice looking truck, and it's doing a good job. So far, everything I've heard about it, that they like it real well. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody's got a truck that looks anywhere as nearly as nice as ours.
Yeah.
And I think they're got a good ride, and they're quiet, and it's just a real good deal.